Thanks for joining. And today I want to go through the ACP workbench that Arylic has kindly shared with me. And I wanted to just kind of show some of the quick features and things that you can do with this product. It's really pretty cool if you got one of the new V3 amplifiers. I'm using it on the 2.1 board, so that's the 2.1 amplifier board that I've recently put together. So with that, I'll kind of give you an orientation of what I'm using, how I'm doing it, and just kind of an overview of all the pieces. All right, so to start off, I've got the Airlick board in this cabinet right here that I've put together. You can see right in the back here. All right, so I've got the standard audio input that I've been using. Also the USB connections. I've got the speakers hooked up, and then of course, way in the back here, I've got the power. All right, so that's your Airlick board. You've got the two antennas on this. And then you'll notice I'm using a Mac. So because of that, I'm going to have to use a Windows machine that's off in a closet in my house. So I'm remoting into this Windows machine and sharing my local USB port here so that my Windows machine can get to the Airlick board itself. Hopefully that makes sense. If not, I can draw something up for you, stick something in the comments, and we'll get it figured out. All right, so zooming in here, this is my USB share, excuse me, and I can share all the local ports that I've got here on the Mac. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this up2 stream and use this device. The piece of software I'm using is Virtual Here Client. It's free and it works great for this purpose. So, okay, so I'm using that up2 stream USB audio connection. That is right there. Okay, so hopefully that orients you to what's going on. All right, so let's get into the software here. I'm going to maximize this so we can make it a little bit easier. All right, so going through the software, there's a lot of different features that pop right up. You can see the PGAs that you've got installed on the board. Each board is going to be a little bit different, right? So you'll see the ADCs that you can enable and or disable. Now on this board, I've got two ADCs because I've got the standard stereo ADC, right? And then I've got the ADC also for the subwoofer side of the amp. Okay, so on this board we also see DAC 0 and DAC 1. Okay, we've got some I2SO that we can turn on or off here. Now I'll be honest, some of this stuff I don't know the full extent of its functionality. So I'm just kind of going through these features for folks that maybe already know or want to look into it. Okay, so you've got your SPDIF connection that you can turn on and off here. You simply select the power button to turn things on and off. All right, so down here we've got our mixing capabilities for our PGAs, ADC digital 0 and ADC digital 1. Okay, so zooming back out, let's go into audio effect. We'll just zip into that. All right, here is pretty interesting. This is where it really got interesting for me. There's a main EQ that you can turn on and off. I left mine off, but within this main EQ, there are filter points that you can set up, and they're adjustable, all right? So what I mean by that is that you can adjust the type of filter that you've got. So you might have a notch filter or something that looks like this that you can adjust completely. So that's the frequency it's centered on. You can change that to, let's change it to 500 hertz. All right, so there you can see the graph changed. It's centered on 500 hertz. You can also change the effect that it has. I'm going to change that to a 1. Let's just take a look. All right, so there's that filter graphed out for you. All right, so I'm going to get rid of that filter. Don't want to use that one. All right, so here we've got a roll-off filter that you can implement. It's centered on 1,000 kilohertz. Let's center that on 2,000 kilohertz and see what happens here. You can see it jumped up to 2,000 kilohertz. All right, so pretty cool stuff there. You can get really detailed with these filters, and you can give each filter a gain or increase or decrease the gain on each filter is what I'm trying to say. All right, so I'm going to turn that off. MB3D, I'm not 100% sure what that is. I believe it's got something to do with three-dimensional processing, but it looked pretty fancy to me, but I'd have to read into that. Virtual base is simply just that. It's a generated base that I don't use. Stereo widening is another feature that I'm not going to be using. Then you've got a harmonic exciter, which is kind of interesting. You can add in harmonics so that you get that pleasing second order harmonic that you can play with a little bit on this. So, whoops, I minimized that. That you can play with this amp. Now, I don't add any harmonics. I mean, it's a common tool that a lot of recording artists use. But that's not something that I really have dived into. All right, so here's a DRC. This is something that you can, the dynamic range compression curve enables you to do dynamic compression on specific or in specific areas, right? So you can do a full band, you can do second band, and different types. So let's just see what this does here. And you can set the crossover frequency. Honestly, I'm not really sure how to use this, but at the end of the day, I'm not very interested in range compression. I want the amp to be in full, what can I say? I basically don't want to implement any compression in it. So I keep that off. Now that's depending on your room and depending on your speakers and setup, that might be something you're interested in. So, it's tunable. There's a lot of things you can do with that. I haven't really delved into it too much. The one place I did find very interesting with the workbench tool was basically the fact that you can pre-gain both your left channel and your right channel EQs, right? Or not EQs, but amplifiers. And you can set where the crossover is, in essence. So here, now this corresponds to the crossover that you set down on the front panel by pressing these knobs. It's the same crossover. So let me just scroll up on this. Come on. There we go. All right, so that's both our left and right channel. I'm gonna go down to where I think it's interesting, to where the mono bass channel is. All right, so this is the mono amp for the subwoofer. Now, the reason it's interesting for me is that my subwoofer is not very efficient, so to really tune that subwoofer to the main speakers I'm using, I needed to bump the boost on this mono channel quite a bit. Once I bumped it up by 10 dB or so, it sounded fantastic. So I was able to not only set that crossover frequency, as you can see here, but I was able to really just bump that whole entire gain, the gain on that entire amplifier up. So now, if you wanted to get really fancy and kind of overlap things, like your right and left channel maybe crosses over at 100 hertz, let's just try that and see what happens here. Okay, so I changed my crossover there to 100 hertz, but the mono channel, the subwoofer channel, crosses over at 80 hertz still. All right, so you can play with those crossover spaces just a little bit there. And I thought that was kind of interesting. Anyways, that was really the feature that I wanted out of using the APC workbench tool. There really wasn't anything else that really grabbed me. There's a ton of stuff you can do, but my biggest problem was just where that crossover point was and how much gain I was getting on that bass amp. Hopefully that makes sense for you. Okay, so I noticed here that got changed, so I need to bump that back up to 10. And that once I make that change, it's already saved to the Airlick board. All right, so I don't have to go and save it or anything like that. Okay, so the other thing you might be interested in is that you can, go to the logs. You can make a log of all your changes if you wanted. I didn't, but you know, others might want to do that. All right, so back on the main menu here, we've got our firmware upgrade that we can do to any of the boards that are connected to the USB port. Let's see. You can set communications type right here. All right, so if you wanted to use, you know, another communication style, you could do it there. All right, so you can save these settings, right? So I've already saved these. So you basically hit export and you choose your file name, bass amp final settings, and save. Yep. And now you've got it saved. So you could have a bunch of different settings. Maybe you're using the amp in different locations for some reason and you want to change it. You could do it through this tool pretty quick. All right, so it does have a nice Chinese and English help menu that you can go to. You can set a password and then about ACP Workbench. I'm on version 2.21.14 of the ACP Workbench. So pretty cool tool. There's a lot of stuff you can do with this. I've only touched just a tiny bit of it. And I think that, you know, for people that are installing these modules in systems or in houses or whatever you're doing, you can really change the way the box sounds simply through this tool. So if maybe your speakers are deficient in some way, or maybe your room is deficient in some way, you can really tweak the sound of this. Okay, thanks for watching, guys. And as you can see, you can do a ton of stuff with this tool. It's really pretty cool, the different things you can tweak on this amp. So if you've got a room that sounds bad, or maybe you've got some speakers that are a little funky, like the ones I've got, you can really tweak it so that it sounds great without having to do physical changes to the speakers or anything like that. So it works flawlessly so far. I haven't had any problems with it whatsoever, and it's worth checking out. All right, thanks, guys.